everyone, welcome back to Literature with Sasha. Today we are diving deep into the fascinating world of the Middle English period, also known as the Anglo-Norman Period, 1100 to 1500. From the impact of the Norman Conquest to the rise of Ionic words like Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales, this period laid the groundwork for the English language we know today. Stick around as we explore how this important era shaped literature, language, and culture. Let's get started. Middle English or Anglo-Norman period 1100 to 1500. Introduction. The Middle English period spanning from around 1100 to 1500 represents a crucial era in development of English language. This period saw dramatic shift in society, culture, and language. The union of Old English, Latin, and French brought up the transformation of English from its Old English roots into what we now recognize as Middle English. Not only did the language undergo significant changes, but so did the culture and literature. In this video, we will explore the rich historical, linguistic, and literary context of the Middle English period. Historical context. The Middle English period began shortly after the Norman Conquest of 1066, when William the Conqueror claimed the throne of England. This marked a significant turning point into the country's history. The language, which had been influenced by Old Norse and Anglo-Saxon languages, was now subject to the dominant influence of Norman French, the language of the new rulers. The period was characterized by political disorders, including the Plantagenet monarchy and the Hundred Years' War, as well as significant social and cultural changes. The influence of the Norman Conquest. One of the most significant events in the Middle English period was the Norman Conquest. When the William invaded England, he brought with him a group of French-speaking nobles and administrators. For several centuries, French was the language of the elite, law, and governance, while the common people continued to speak Old English. This bilingual society contributed to the creation of a new language that was heavily influenced by both Old French and Old English, paving the way for the development of Middle English. The development of Middle English, the transition from Old English to Middle English, involved several important changes. Phonologically, Old English had a more complex system of sounds, but by the Middle English period, many of these sounds have evolved and disappeared. For example, the vowel system underwent a major shift and complex case system of Old English was simplified. The sentence structures and word order of Old English were also changed, making Middle English more similar to modern English. The role of French in the Middle English period. During the Middle English period, French had a profound influence on English. After the Norman Conquest, French became the language of the court, law, and the church, while English was spoken by the common people. As a result, many French words were adopted into English, particularly in areas such as law, government, art, and culture. These borrowing from French enriched the English vocabulary, making it more diverse and nuanced. Major literary work of the period. The Middle English period is known for its remarkable literary achievements. One of the most important works from this time is Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, which provide a vivid snapshot of medieval society. The poem is written in Middle English and features a diverse cast of characters, each telling a story during their visit to Canterbury. Also, vernacular literature. The rise of Middle English marked a shift from Latin and French as a primary language for literary and religious works. By the 14th century, writers began to use English to compose poems, plays, and religious texts. This helped establish English as a literary language and made it more accessible to the general public. Chaucer's works in particular played a crucial role in elevating English as a respected language of literature, the language of the Calgary and the common people. Latin remained the language of the Calgary and the intellectual elite throughout the Middle English period. It was the language of the church, scholarly writings, and many legal documents. However, the common people used English in their daily lives, and this led to the development of a distinct language for the masses. This division between Latin for the elite and English for the people played a role in the evolution of the English language. Grammar and syntax changes. During the Middle English period, the grammar of English underwent significant changes. One of the most important developments was the simplification of the Old English system of inflection. In Old English, the language had a complex system of case endings, but over time, these were dropped, making English syntax simpler and closer to modern forms. Additionally, words order become more important in Middle English as the case system was no longer available to convey the relationships between the words. The evolution of vocabulary. The Middle English period saw an explosion of new words in English language, primarily due to the influence of French and Latin. These borrowed words enriched the English lexicon, especially in areas like law, science, medicine, and art. For instance, words like court, government, and council come from French, while Latin contributed words like religion and education. Middle English literature and the church. The church play a central role in preserving literature during the Middle English period. Many religious texts were written in Latin, but some were also composed in English to make them more accessible to the general population. Additionally, the church was the instrumental in the production of manuscripts and teaching of reading and writing. Regional dialects. One of the defining characteristics of Middle English was the existence of regional dialectics. Due to the decentralized nature of medieval England, different regions spoke distinct variety of Middle English. These dialectics often differed in terms of vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. The dialectics of London and the East Midlands were particularly in and helped shape the development of standard English. Social and cultural influence on language. Language during the Middle English period was also influenced by social class and cultural shifts. The language was spoken primarily by the lower classes, while the upper classes often used French or Latin. Over time, however, English became to gain prestige, particularly during the reign of King Richard II, who promoted the use of English in official documents. Decline of the Anglo-Norman influence. By the late Middle English period, the influence of Anglo-Norman began to wane. The Hundred Years' War, 1337-1453, and the rise of a more combined English identity helped push English to the forefront as the language of the kingdom. By the end of 15th century, English had become the dominant language in England, marking the decline of Anglo-Norman. Conclusion. The Middle English period was a time of great change in both the English language and the culture of England. From the effect of the Norman Conquest to the rise of vernacular literature, the period saw the gradual evolution of English into the language we know today. The works of great authors like Chaucer laid the foundation for English literature, and the blending of Old English, French, and Latin contributed to a rich and diverse vocabulary. The changes in grammar, vocabulary, and syntax during the Middle English period play important role in the development of modern English. That's all for today's journey through the Middle English period. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Anglo-Norman era and how it shaped the English language, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Literature with Sasha. For more in-depth discussion on literary history, drop your thoughts or questions in the comments. I would love to hear from you. See you in the next video.